All right. All set. This open meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on July 16, 2022. All members of the Master Plan Implementation Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The act allows the Master Plan Implementation Committee to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Julianne Hirsch.
Here.
Fran Backstrom.
Here.
Millie Milton.
Here.
Jean Kennedy.
Here.
Amy Paretsky.
Here.
John Campbell.
Here.
And Ashley Davies here. And staff, we have Lori Connors.
Here.
All right. So I think we'll just kick it right off, and I'll turn it over to Jonathan to present on some of the work they've been doing.
Thanks, Ashley. Good evening, everybody.
Yeah.
Good news for you all. I'm not here by myself this evening. I know you're sick of my face and my voice, so I have a co-host tonight, which is Russ from RKG Associates, and he'll go over some of the stakeholder engagement that we've had to this point. Am I sharing my? Oh, here we go. Next slide, please. So it's the usual format. We go over the agenda, updates since the last meeting, and then next steps. So next slide, please. A project schedule. So if you can believe it, we're almost to Christmas now. I have 2 birthdays before Christmas Day for my kids. So this time for me, at the time of year, is pretty hectic. So I'm sure it's for everybody else. You know, but can you believe we're nearly 2023? It's kind of crazy. You can see that community engagement has been a big component in the last month or so. We kind of touched on that at last meeting. And Russ has been busy forming some interviews with the selected people that we were given names for. And then we will move into, after the holidays, into some conceptual plan development. We talked previously at the last meeting about traffic studies, and I'll go a little bit more into that when we get on to the next slide. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So tonight we're going to talk over the online survey that was closed on December 2nd. So we've collated those final results. As I mentioned just a second ago, the town have decided to complete the traffic counts themselves. So I believe that's going to be around sometime in early January. And once those counts are done, then they'll hand that off to us, and then we will form the basis of a report and recommendations based on those counts. We'll also use those counts, as I said previously, to open discussions with Mass DOT. And again, they will help us to envision and conceptualize how we move forward with the master plan for downtown. As I mentioned, last month or so has been pretty hectic or heavily involved with stakeholder engagement. I think we mentioned before the 2, Norm and Millie, we spoke to those prior to the last meeting, but since that meeting we spoke to John, Michelle and Tim, and we're still trying to get in touch with Chris Singus. We've reached out to him a couple of times, but yet to firm a meeting up with him. And again, Russ will go over some of the talking points that came from all this engagement. Next slide, please. So final survey results. We all agreed at the last meeting to keep it open until the end of the month / and beginning of December. We closed it down on the 2nd, I believe that was a Friday. And these are the final results that were collated from that. So 635 responses, which is a pretty good response. Most people are residents, as you can see, which is not too dissimilar to what I presented last time. Next slide, please. Resident status, most people who responded own a property in Northborough, which is great. Next slide, please. And this didn't really change, even though we got more responses, it didn't really change. It's interesting when you look at this, that this was the question that most people skipped. I'm not sure why, whether they thought they may offend somebody with their response. I don't know. I would have thought that if people are, taking, this survey, that they would want to give reasons why they don't like downtown. But I guess some people got a little bit shy, or they didn't want to respond. But I think that, like I said, the responses didn't really change from the last poll that we collated. That's similar things: unattractive, there's little to do downtown, too congested, not enough parking, which is always an interesting response. And whether there is enough parking or not, that's always a sticking point for some people. Next slide, please. I presented this at the last meeting, this question: what type of development services do people want to see more or less of? I highlighted the ones that they want to see more of. And again, it's the same old story, that they want to see retail, restaurants, pubs, places to drink, and farmers markets. So they're all related to entertainment and dining and drinking. So I think that shows pretty much where the downtown is lacking right now. Next slide, please. And then when focusing on revitalization, what are the top priorities? So again, similar story: eateries, more restaurants, cafes, bakeries, streetscape improvements. So more benches, wider sidewalks, improvements to storefronts, the facades of storefronts, fill the empty spaces, and then walkability, which again relates back to streetscape and improving, the experience for pedestrians when they are going downtown. Next slide, please. So with this, I will hand it over to Russ.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan. I wanted to take the opportunity tonight just to sort of brief you on what I've heard said to date. These interviews are confidential in the sense that we tell people we're not going to share information that they share with us, specifically about maybe what their plans are in the future. Some of these people are business owners, some people are in real estate. These are proprietary issues that we're talking about in some cases. But really the purpose of the interview, from my perspective, is to get a sense of what people think about the downtown, so we can sort of identify what the range of issues are. These are not the only people we're going to talk to, as I think we're going to discuss later. We're going to be doing some outreach to the business community, to the general community of residents. So we'll get lots and lots of opinions. But in summary, people are echoing some of the things they've said in the past, that traffic can be disruptive. The volume of traffic in the morning and the evening on Route 20 creates problems. It's a major commuter route, and thus everyone who's traveling through the downtown is not necessarily there to partake in the downtown. They're simply passing through to other destinations. This makes the environment a little less safe for pedestrians. They don't feel like they are dominant in that environment. It's more trucks and vehicles. People believe parking is an issue. Now, there's some nuances to this. There may be enough parking in some locations, but not in others. It's not located where I think most people would like to have it in all cases. So sometimes that is the sort of balancing act. There's a number of gas stations that are sort of at key locations along Main Street that create potential redevelopment obstacles, but there's no indication that those folks are selling or moving their properties. So there may not be much that can be done there. But in other communities, that has become a central topic of discussion. There's some skepticism about what positive changes could occur along Main Street as it relates to parking and the width of the travel way and the speed of vehicles. That's something that Jonathan's firm will be looking into in greater detail. People generally believe the river to be an asset, but they all recognize that it's not really very visible. There's not as many places to access it. And if it's going to become a bigger part of downtown, it needs to be sort of revealed to the community in a different way. So people could get access along it and see it, be more visible. Then there's just an observation that I'm making as I'm talking to people, that there appears to be some desire to see a more sort of comprehensive revitalization effort. And that goes beyond just a project-based sort of initiatives. And there's a management side of this that we haven't talked about that we'll probably have to revisit towards the end of this. Who does that? Who brings together events? And right now they're occurring by other entities. Who's marketing downtown? Who's recruiting businesses? These are all the full range of things that could potentially be on the list of revitalization strategies that there really is no mechanism right now to see these things to fruition. Next slide. Next slide. One of our expertise is understanding downtown markets in terms of the demand for businesses, what people want to do in downtowns, and what recruitment opportunities may exist to bring new businesses or to start up new businesses and support who's there currently. And we're in the process of analyzing that to see what those potential businesses are. But I think what we've seen in just the last month or so is that just the location of Northborough in the context of the greater Boston area is an advantage. You're centrally located. People see that they have access to their other employment centers if they live in the community. Now, do we have all the things that we need for people who live in the community? No, and I think that's why we're all here tonight, to discuss what those things should be, how the downtown could change to better serve people's needs, and then what does that really look like? Right now, and the other work that we're doing in this part of the country, everyone that is doing anything on the development side is looking for land. And the closer you get to Boston, the more expensive the land is. You go further out, and people are looking for those opportunities. Now, whether or not those opportunities exist in the downtown is sort of one thing that we need to vet as we do our research. And then we need to hear what the community says about what they would either allow in the downtown or want to see in the downtown. I think the sort of underlying assumption is that there could be changes that could occur over time, depending on where the community wants to go. And, we will have a full assessment of that by the time we complete our work and report back to the community. Some people believe that downtown would be a reasonable place to live for certain people, particularly people who are looking to downsize from their current homes and move into something in a smaller context in downtown, maybe a condominium. I think to do that, you need to provide a proper environment for people, and usually that comes in the form of entertainment. They're looking for restaurants and shopping and entertainment, and that's not something we have a lot of. So I think if we move forward on that sort of idea, we need to understand that. Others believe that young people would see Northborough as a place to live as well. So I think we need to sort of vet those opportunities and come back to you with our conclusions about that. The area around the 4 West Main Street building, which is one of the more prominent buildings on Main Street, presents an interesting opportunity. We don't have a full sense of what the opportunity exists today. We haven't talked to all the property owners yet, but we know that that building has the potential to come back to the town's ownership in the future for a small sum of money. And the question becomes, what should that be used for? Should it be an activity center that attracts people downtown and they can shop or dine at that location? Is it a place for a town hall, which is located there at one time? Again, whatever happens there should be is sort of the centerpiece of what occurs downtown. It should be a place that draws people to it. I think we need to be prepared to say in the plan what is explicitly desired by the community. I think it's easy for us to say, well, we would rather not see this or that, but I think to give proper sort of vision to what the community would like to see, I think we need to sort of identify through our planning efforts with the community, what exactly do we want? The survey is starting to tell us some things, but we need to hear people say that throughout this process before we can draw some conclusions. I think, what's going to come in the next steps is sort of investigating some of these issues. This is basically from my perspective, and then coming back to you with a set of data analyses and findings that sort of point us in a certain direction. And, all that will happen over the next few months.
Back to me before someone could say you're on mute. So as Russ mentioned, his company are going to keep doing market analysis interviews. What we'd like to potentially get on the calendar from this evening is a date for a business owners workshop, a workshop with the community at large. And as I mentioned previously, the traffic counts will begin in early January, which is to be coordinated by the town. That completes the presentation for tonight. So we'll open it up for questions, discussion. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Millie, you came off mute.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question
Sure.
if I can go. On the survey back, I think it was the second page where it said reasons people don't want to come back into town. And you have a category called other. Did you get written responses in that category? I'm just curious if people said anything.
No, it was just other without any response. Or without any detailed response.
Okay.
So
So they didn't really do the please specify. Okay.
Right.
I
Okay.
know when I was taking the survey, there were so many I wanted to check off, it's a little tricky. So it could have been that.
Mhm.
Jonathan, I was wondering, do you want us to try to come up with some of these dates tonight in real time, or I don't know if we should maybe do that over email?
I don't know, Laurie, what do you think? Is that something that we can nail down tonight? I mean, it doesn't need to be tonight. I just wanted to get it out there to say that this is going to be, two of the next steps for this, not specifically this group, but for this project. So if people had opinions on when they think that should be, and we're obviously looking at January now, I guess I'll open that for discussion. But I don't think we necessarily have to nail down January 7th today.
It would be helpful for me, just from a coordination standpoint. Sometimes it's frustrating because, you can wait several days before everybody responds to an email. So it would be helpful for me if we can at least kick around a few dates, and then we can look for confirmation that those dates are going to work for folks. The wider group, because of course there are some individuals, committee members who aren't present this evening. So of course our next meeting in January is January 19th. So I was wondering if folks thought that that might be a good time to have the wider community workshop during the regularly scheduled meeting at 7 p.m. And I'm thinking that we would benefit from an in-person workshop instead of a virtual workshop. So what do folks think of January 19th at 7 p.m.?
I like it.
And is that for which workshop was this?
That would be the community workshop. So the feedback that, of course, Russ can explain, but he had mentioned to me earlier that he thought a morning workshop would work best for the business community. So, you know, before they start their workday.
Now, I guess we have to decide whether or not this is in person or virtual. One thing with business folks, if they're in a downtown setting, they typically are going in early to open up their shops, their businesses. Once that happens, you know, they're focused on that. So we could meet earlier in the morning over breakfast if that's possible. I'm not sure where we would do it, but that's one option. Virtually sort of puts you in a different realm. As far as my availability, my wife is having a back surgery in January. I don't have a date yet. So they don't necessarily have to occur, the business group meeting at the same time the public is meeting, but I just want to put that out there. Maybe towards the end of January or the 1st of February might be in a different position, but I don't know yet.
Yeah, Amy?
Yeah, my only input of not having it on the 19th would be, are we losing one of our regularly scheduled meetings with the consultants because we have so many meetings? And usually after the public meetings, we get an analysis of what occurred during that public meeting. So to me, I feel like we need the public meeting before our January 19th meeting. So then on the 19th, we can discuss what we learned at the public meeting. That would be my thing.
No, Jonathan, when we were talking about this meeting this week, earlier in the week, there's some planning involved to prepare for that community meeting, depending on what sort of activities we have planned for folks. Do you have any concern about doing that earlier, or do you think the next month is adequate time to that?
No, I think there's enough time, because it's not like we're going to come to this meeting with design concepts and master plans to review. It's more of a information gathering, facilitating ideas from people, showing image boards of similar to what I showed at the last meeting to get people's interest about things they like and don't like. So, you know, producing that amount of work in that time is not going to be an issue.
Okay.
And Jonathan, I can't remember, will committee members be facilitating, or will there be folks from Weston and Sampson facilitating?
There'll be people from, not just myself, from Weston Sampson and Russ. You know, we'll have 2 or 3, 4 people there. So
Okay.
I think that should be enough.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure, in case, you know, it ends up on a date that the whole committee isn't able to come, that we have enough folks kind of running the show, but it sounds like we will. Julianne?
So I think it's really important that we get as much community input as possible, and therefore I would highly recommend that we have a hybrid meeting. We've done it at the high school. I hope we could do it again, but there are some people who are still worried about all of the viruses running around, and there are some people who have children at home, and I would like to capture as much as we can, and having an in-person meeting really limits the audience. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think we discussed on Tuesday, right? This idea, and the reason for an in-person is there's just a lot more ability to kind of get people's feedback in a multifaceted way. But I agree, it would be nice to be able to have it hybrid, and it sounded like that was an option. It's just that the input from those that were virtual is going to be a little more limited. In person, they'll be able to kind of draw ideas and do things in a more, I don't know, comprehensive way. But Jonathan, was that kind of?
Yeah, I think, obviously if we do things in person, we can still present graphics. We can still, we can sit round a table with crayons, somebody mentioned on Tuesday, but maybe, felt pens, and we can get people engaged in that way to put their ideas onto paper. Obviously, there are ways to facilitate feedback and get ideas through the online forum now. We've learned how to do that, but having people actually sketch ideas and sort of sit around a table and kind of play ideas off each other is a little more difficult in a virtual environment.
Fran,
So,
did you have your hand up before? Oh, we
Is
can't
this-
hear you.
Fran, you're
Oh, there
on.
you are. There you are.
Okay, I think hybrid is the fairest way of trying to get as many people in as possible. It won't be ideal for the people who are participating remote, but at least they're part of it. Even if they're not in the full engagement with the crayons and felt pens. I mean, they could do that at home as well and show it up on the screen. I just don't want anyone to feel discouraged because of what's going on in the CDC world that is going to be with us for the rest of our lives. I also think that we shouldn't use one of our meetings as the night, because that would then reduce the number of times that we have to meet and or discuss. It would be then February before we would be able to even discuss what was brought up. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Daria?
On board with the hybrid as well. I think the more people you include in anything we do, the better it is. And it might not be as good for the people that are remote, but at least they can listen and comment. They might not see all the the minute details, but and a lot of times they can't come in even if they want to come in. But I say the more the merrier, and they may not have the best experience, but they can sit through the whole process, and if they're really interested, jump in the next time.
Yeah, I agree. I just participated in a hybrid conference, and it wasn't ideal, but it was still helpful. I still got a lot out of it. Probably not as much as I would have in person, but it was good.
Preston Sampson can put some of the graphics up too, not necessarily the live sketches. We can do live sketches because we have a camera directly above our table, so everybody can watch the markers and crayons, but that's, it still is, they'll get 80% of the meeting if we're sketching. And I think that's a big deal.
Plus, with a little effort, you could have questions or exercises for people who are joining us online that the people who are in the meeting can also respond to as well. So, I think there's a way to make that meeting experience a little bit more fulfilling, even though they're not there sort of having a face-to-face discussion.
So obviously it sounds like folks would like to have it not on a meeting date. Is Thursday a good day to look for? I think I'm kind of looking to you, Lori, because I'm sure you have more meetings than some of us, evening meetings.
Yeah, unfortunately, Tuesdays and Wednesdays are definitely off limits for me. I have other commitments on those nights. So I am available on Mondays, and I'm available every Thursday except for the first Thursday of each month.
And I'll throw my hat into the ring that Mondays would be out. Monday and Thursdays Monday would be preferred for me.
Okay.
But if Thursday's the day, then we can make that work for sure.
How long do you anticipate the meeting to last?
I mean, probably a couple of hours tops, 90 minutes.
Okay, I just wondered if you do it before the meeting, or is that just too much for that Thursday? If we did it at 5 o'clock and then our normal meeting was at 7.
I think it would be hard to get a lot of people out by 5,
Fair enough.
right? I think that's just cutting it a little close.
Yeah, and then also we wouldn't be able to present the findings at that meeting. So
Yeah, right. And so how much lead time do you need between a public session and a meeting to present findings? Oh, you're on mute, Jonathan.
I always trying to go through a meeting without someone saying you're on mute.
Gotcha.
I'm just looking at my calendar here. So if that's on the, I mean, if we did it Monday, 9th of January, say we chose the Monday, that would give us, 10 days to collate everything and get a presentation ready for the next MPIC meeting.
If we chose that date, then of course, we'd have to start advertising right away. So I would need some sort of flyer. And of course, my goal would be to have that in the community advocate. So that's one consideration, is it doesn't give us a heck of a lot of time to promote the workshop. But if that's the date, then I'm sure we could figure out a way to make it work.
Do you want to avoid conflict with selectmen's meetings? Which are Mondays, right?
Second and fourth Mondays of the month, usually.
Is the 9th?
This is the second
Yeah.
Monday. I'm going to be away that day. I might be back in time, but I'm going to be tight.
So what if we did the 16th, but then instead of having our meeting on the 19th, we had our meeting on the 26th? Would
The
that work?
holiday, Lori.
Oh,
I mean, not for me personally, but isn't it for the town?
yeah, you're right.
On the
That's Martin
26th?
Luther King Day.
What about Thursday, the 12th as an alternate?
But it's the time factor, right, of getting all of this out. Nobody's going to be paying attention to anything until the first week of January.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
right, would you agree?
We
Yes.
could do the 19th and then have our meeting on the 26th.
No, because the meeting is a holiday, isn't it? We
The
wouldn't be able to get
26th is the holiday.
It was the
Covered.
16th.
The 16th
is
was.
the holiday.
Monday, the 16th.
26 is fine.
So if we do,
I like that idea. Have the session on the 19th and the meeting on the 26th. Would that work for everyone?
Could make it work.
I don't hear anybody saying it won't work.
I would.
We're meeting
probably
on
have
Thursdays as a
conflict myself on
habit, so it
Thursday.
works.
All right, well, should we settle on that? Jonathan and Lori, you guys and Russ?
That works for me.
Yeah, I can make that work.
Okay.
So it's the MPI, the workshop on the 19th, and then the meeting on the 26th.
Yep. Great. Should we try to figure out a time for the business owners breakfast? Lori, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. One more time, my daughter was talking at the same
Oh,
time.
sorry. I thought you were talking about- should we try to figure out the business owners meeting as well now? The breakfast, a date for that?
Yes, I'd be interested, Russ, if you have any suggestions for what days of the week generally work well for business owners. Do you Is there kind of a science to that? Like they
Well,
do better on Tuesdays versus
That's a good
Wednesdays?
question. Millie, you're someone qualified to answer this question. What's your thoughts about the best time to meet with folks?
I think, depending on the industry, but a lot of restaurants can be closed on Mondays or Tuesdays.
Okay,
Mm,
That does tend to be a slower day for some of those. And I think you have two that Chris Singus and myself that are in that category.
Yep.
I think you have two that are other business owners. Again, I think they might fall in the same pattern. Maybe Tuesdays instead of Mondays. A lot of people don't like to make their meetings on Mondays because they're just catching up on stuff.
right. Well, I'm looking at my schedule and, I have 2 weeks at the end of the month, which don't look good. The one we mentioned, I'm not sure that I can probably call into the meeting on the 26th, but I'll be out of town, and the following week I'm in Arkansas with another commitment. So that puts me into the week of the 5th of February, where I'm on the ground. Now, and that would be, what's the date for that? It is the 7th. So that, given what is going to transpire at the end of the month, and who knows about my wife's situation, but let's assume that's the first part of the month. That's what I'm looking at.
And there's not any reason we need to have these both occur before a meeting. They don't really need to happen at the same time, you said.
No, not necessarily. I mean, we're taking a different approach for, I think, both groups. One's more of a conversation. People don't have quite the same amount of time to commit for the business meeting. We need 60 minutes, maybe 90 minutes in the morning, but beyond that, we probably can't expect much more than that.
And would it be helpful to have the feedback from, I mean, it's going to be after this public session anyway, I'm sure, no matter what, but is it going to be helpful to have the results from that to kind of share with the business owners in that meeting?
Sure. Yeah, I think people would be interested to know what happened at the meeting if they're
Okay.
not able to attend.
So regardless, having it
so-
after the 26th.
Yeah, so we could share some of that information with them.
Okay. So you want to say the 7th of February? Is that the morning of the
Yeah.
7th? Yeah.
Let's focus on the 7th, which is a Tuesday. And we'll have to work out the logistics of that meeting and where that would occur. I don't know how many people would attend. I'd assume it's going to be a small group. But I
I would think it would probably be most convenient for them if we held it in the downtown location, like maybe at the town hall,
Okay.
just so they won't have very far to go.
No, I would agree.
We won't have the ability to do a hybrid model there. So it would just have to be in person.
Now, we may be able to come back later with a virtual meeting if people find that they can't make this and they want to have an opportunity to say something. That might be a way to sort of make people whole in that regard. But I think there's some value in meeting in person and getting to meet me, and I will be bringing with me some observations and data analysis to share with them as I get into that conversation. So I'd like to do that in person if I can.
I have a question about that. So the meeting is not going to be like a half-day thing. And you will have some questions and some information to share. Can you do that ahead of time? Because I'm only speaking for myself, but so many times I go to a meeting, something's presented, a day later, hours later, I come up with, another thought that I wished I had shared. I think if people have a couple days to think about what you're going to ask, it could be helpful.
Sure. Yeah. So I can sort of send out maybe something equivalent to a briefing memo or something that sort of outlines the nature of the conversation we're going to have with people, just to sort of prompt them as to what the topics will be and what issues I'm going to be presenting to them, or information I'm going to present to them. And if there's a PowerPoint I'm using, they can see that beforehand as well.
Thanks. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, and if people haven't ever sort of had the opportunity to sort of be involved in something like this, and that would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. Daria, were you about to say something?
I was just agreeing 100%.
Awesome.
And is this something you're gonna provide to every business in town, or?
Every business will be invited. So what I envisioned is that I would go door to door and drop off a flyer and personally invite the various business owners. And that way, if they have questions, then, I can expand upon it. I would be interested in having some help with that process, because obviously that's a big undertaking to go door to door and talk to the various businesses. So if somebody would like to help me with that endeavor, that would be appreciated.
How many businesses are in Northborough?
It would just be the downtown focus area. So
okay.
I wasn't thinking that I was going to invite like the businesses up at Northborough Crossing or, the industries.
So we
Now
will.
you already are invited, of course.
Well, no, I'm just saying, would you be coming as far out as here? That was my real question, because we're not downtown, but there's, I don't know, 12, 15 businesses in this building.
So I envisioned that I would go down door to door to the ones that are within, within this focus area. So that map that Weston and Sampson had prepared a while ago.
Mhm.
Are we in jeopardy of having people leaving town after the holidays and taking a break? Meaning not being available for a meeting on February 7th?
Do you mean business owners, or do you mean?
Yeah, business owners. Some people just shut down and say, look, I've had it. I got through the holiday season. I'm going to take a break and head south.
I mean, I don't know of anybody specifically, but I do know that there are some restaurants that do that.
Yeah.
And I think you're getting into, I think the next week is school vacation week, but I'm not sure.
All right.
But if we're
School
just
vacation week
focusing on,
starts the 19th.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. If we're just focusing on the downtown, I mean, let's think about what's along Main Street. I mean,
There's not
you're
many
not inviting
restaurants.
the gas stations. I mean, you can CVS, and then maybe a dozen little storefronts.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, if people push back and say, look, they're not going to be around, then I guess we have to deal with that and come up with another solution. But let's go with this plan as it stands at the moment.
Yeah, and when we're going door to door, I anticipate that there are going to be some business owners that aren't there when we go door to door, in which case, we'll drop off a flyer and a business card. And so they have the opportunity, even if they don't come, they have the opportunity to call and share. So maybe that's something we should put in the flyer. So if you're unable to attend this event and you have something that you would be interested in sharing, please reach out to me and you, Russ, and
Yep.
then provide our contact information.
Sure.
I'd be happy
So-
to help you with that, Lori.
For the public meeting, is 6 p.m. start time a good? I think if it's 7, it might be too late to start. I think 6. Most people are done with work and maybe dinner by that point. And then it's not too late into the night if people have young kids and they have to get back and put them to bed. And then following on from that, do we have a location in mind where this should take place?
I think it'll have to be the school because that's the only place where we could do a hybrid approach. And it's the high school, right? High school cafeteria.
Yeah,
We
we
did
had an
it
ARPA
there.
meeting at the, no, it was the high school library, I think.
Hmm.
Do they have round tables? Do you know?
Did anybody here go to high school there?
When I went to high school, it was a chalkboard. So, I mean, I don't think they didn't have circles then.
There are definitely tables there, but I can't remember if they're round or square, rectangle.
They make a big rectangle with the rectangle tables for their meetings.
We just
Regarding your-
won't promise the shape of the table on the flyer, and people won't get upset if that's not
Are you
round.
talking about an Algonquin?
I think we'll
If
be
it's
okay.
square
Yeah,
or
Algonquin.
rectangle, it's
They have
okay.
big round tables. If you go there, like to all those performances, I've set up 20 round tables 20 times at Algonquin.
There you go.
So high school library, 6 p.m.
In the gym.
Regarding the 6 p.m., I mean, for people who eat regularly, isn't that right?
Well, we'll have to
An hour
have
for
some
families?
food options, so we'll have to have some snacks. Yeah, of course, we won't be feeding people dinner.
No,
But,
just more
you know,
to your attendance
cheese and
point,
crackers.
to Jonathan's attendance point, I just wondered if, you know, is that just right in the middle of people having dinner or attending the family, and
Hmm.
7 isn't all that late, but just looking for pros and cons.
Yeah, I'm
What do you
kind of
think,
with you,
Ashley? Yeah.
John. Yeah,
You have
I
all the
mean,
kids.
yeah, if it's at 6 o'clock, it's like you're not gonna make it back anyway for bedtime. So, well, for me, I wouldn't. If it was at 7, then at least I eat dinner with them and go. But it's there's no perfect time. I'm sure. You know.
Should we split the difference and say 6:30, or we can do
6:30.
7?
There you go.
Yeah, let's do that.
We also have to confirm that the high school is available.
Oh yeah.
I can check that.
Yeah, if you can let me know, Laurie, and we can get a flyer to you pretty quickly. So
Okay.
We did have another forum during the master plan in the cafeteria, and I don't know if they have the same capability for that hybrid. But they did have some technology there available. Just as another option in case it's not, the library is not.
Wasn't that the cafeteria in the middle school?
We did it one at the cafeteria in the middle school and one at the high school.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I don't remember that one. Okay.
Wasn't as good of a turnout when we did it at the high school as when we did it at the middle school.
no one likes cafeteria lunches at school. That's probably why.
Right, so we get on our meetings. We don't have anything else.
I have a question before the consultants leave. Is this a good
Sure.
time?
Yeah. Yep.
So, like, you have all seen our beautiful White Cliffs building in town.
Yeah.
And where we've just received 3 proposals for that building. How does this group make sure that that group don't plan the same kind of thing for for West Main Street is
Mhm.
White Cliffs.
The
How are
very
we
good
going
point.
to, integrate this information?
Lori, you had a suggestion earlier in the week.
Yeah,
that?
I mean, I think it's important to wait until the White Cliffs Committee does its due diligence. So there are a couple of proposals that are very different. So two of them are housing proposals, and one of them is exclusively a business proposal. So I think that it is important to include what's happening at White Cliffs ultimately in the discussion, in the plans, the ultimate downtown revitalization plan that's devised. But I don't think that, I think that the White Cliffs Committee needs to do its due diligence, and there's a lot that will go into selecting the appropriate proposal. So there's going to be interviews, and there's going to be, looking into the finances of the folks who are who submitted the proposals, and determining which one is the most realistic. So at this point, I have no idea what that's going to be. So I think with the White Cliffs, we should take a wait and see approach, and hopefully it'll be more clear as we get further along what's happening. Like possibly in February, there'll be a firmer grasp on what the ultimate use of White Cliffs will be.
I think too, Julianne, we talked on Tuesday about definitely providing just a kind of reminder to the White Cliffs Committee on what was in the master plan and how White Cliffs uses, or whichever use they choose or group they choose, might help to accomplish master plan goals. So I think for us, that's kind of our role, is to remind them what's applicable within the master plan and in terms of what's going to happen at White Cliffs, and can you hold on a second? And just, kind of insert ourselves that way. But obviously they're going to make the final decision, but we want to make sure that things are cohesive and following master plan, and obviously interacting with what happens downtown as well in an appropriate way. So
yeah, no, I'll just add on to that if a decision on White Cliffs is made in time before we submit this final master plan, or there's information available, we'll obviously utilize that to develop our final master plan. We're not going to go in with blinkers on to not know or not incorporate what they're thinking. For example, if they're going to be all housing, do we need as much housing in downtown? And if it's all businesses, vice versa. So we'll take into consideration what they are proposing and use that as we develop the plan for downtown.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I would also hope that the White Cliffs Committee would look into what town meeting voted on for White Cliffs, because it was typed up on what the purpose of the purchase was. And even though the master plan might have certain goals, the town meeting who voted on White Cliffs also had certain goals and requirements. So I would hope they'd look into that too.
What is obvious at this point is you have 3 proposals. Right now, that's the whole universe of options in front of you. Now, if none of those came to fruition, I guess there'd be other considerations to make, but whatever they decide they think they can accomplish there, we can do something in the downtown that complements it. We certainly don't want to compete against it. We want both to be successful. So, at some point there'll be a meeting of the minds if that process moves along at a reasonable place. But, they move slowly. These are negotiations on an expensive project.
I mean, but it's
all good information to have.
I just was going to say, I mean, it's certainly an important structure for accomplishing you know, what folks want to see downtown, even though it's a little on the periphery.
Yep.
It could help us accomplish, you know, a lot of what
Absolutely.
the community wants to see. So hopefully that, you know, we can kind of just give that information that we glean from the public participation to the White Cliffs Committee, just so they know, maybe
Mhm.
as they're making their decisions.
Anything else, Jonathan?
No, I just finished with thank you, that's all.
Just another question for the consultants.
Sure.
Sure.
Are you scheduling any more stakeholder interviews or individual interviews before the breakfast or before the meeting?
We're gonna have other people we reach out to. You know, once we talk to Chris Singus, that will be the last of the folks that Lori suggested we talk to. If there are other people who you think we should talk to, I'll be more than willing to do that. I'll be reaching out to people who understand the local real estate market as I do that research. So those aren't necessarily on a list, but they're people who are going to be professionals in the industry that can sort of help us sort of sort things out. Did you have someone in mind, John?
No, not a person in particular. I was
Okay.
curious in the big picture, and you know, I'll ask you a question, and it may be premature, but I'm interested in the long run what you anticipate in your analysis or in your final conclusions to include specific initiatives to businesses or landowners or outreach to them about developing in a certain way that contributes to your conclusions about downtown Northborough. And then secondly to that, do you anticipate your analysis to also say to the town of Northborough, to accomplish goal A, B, or C, you may need to figure out a way to acquire certain properties? Are those conclusions that you anticipate drawing in your final report?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we can't say as we're talking tonight what those opportunities may be or how realistic they are. If they're not realistic, then obviously I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. But if there is a kernel of opportunity that just needs to be explored and vetted, we can start that process. We may not get to the conclusion of that because those things take years to develop sometime. You also sort of raised another point that we talked about earlier this week, is that there's a difference between business owners and merchants and the people who own the property that may be leasing to those folks, the property owners. They have a different objective. They have a perspective that we need, and we'll probably reach out to several of those. Obviously, probably some of the larger ones we need to talk to, because they have plans, or they may have plans about the long-term viability of their property, maybe the need to redevelop their property. That is different from the daily decision-making of the businesses that may be operating on site today. And to the extent that they would share some of those ideas with us, we would want to know. I'm not saying that they would, but we need their perspective, because those are the people who can make decisions that could change the whole complexion of downtown and create opportunities where we don't see them today. So we will be reaching out to those folks as well. We can't talk to everyone, but we'll talk to the major ones who control properties that, if they were to change use, would change the outcome of downtown.
Thank you.
Yep.
And just along the same line, just if anybody else has any additional, you know, folks that you feel should be reached out to, if, you know, that opportunity might arise, just let us know and we can forward that on. All right. Well, thanks, guys. That was really helpful, and looking forward to these forums.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, and we'll talk
Happy
to you
holidays.
next year.
To you all, Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Thank you
See
all.
ya.
Bye.
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 All right. Next on the agenda was the update on status of the complete streets. Lori, did you have an update on that?
I do.
All right.
So we have gone through our vetting process. So Woodard and Curran and staff, which of course consists of myself, Scott Charpentier, and Fred, town engineer. And we have come up with a numbered list of projects, which we are going to be presenting to the Board of Selectmen at their meeting on Monday night. The first step in the vetting process is we took the criteria and we categorized each project based on the criteria. So for example, we came up with a score for each individual project. And then we looked at our listing and we compared to the input that we had received from the public during this meeting that we had in September, the Complete Streets Community Forum that we held at a Board of Selectmen meeting, I believe that was in October. The survey results that we had received, 808 responses. And we also vetted based on projects that are currently in the queue. So they're currently being worked on, for example, the aqueduct projects. And we have these projects have a strong likelihood of being funded with grant monies. So there were some adjustments to the ranking that reflect those additional steps. Like I said, projects that are currently underway, projects that were identified as top priorities during the various community events, as well as projects that are highly fundable. So that's pretty much what we're going to present. And assuming that we get the blessing of the Board of Selectmen at Monday night's meeting, then the step after that is we will be submitting the prioritization plan to Mass DOT for final approval. That needs to be done by before December 31st, because that is the deadline for completion of the technical assistance grant. So that is what we are striving to accomplish. So if you are interested, then definitely check out the Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday night. Not quite sure where we are in the queue, but oftentimes they put us towards the early part of the meeting.
All right. Any questions for Lori? No. All right. Well, the last thing on the agenda was just to go over the minutes from November. Did anybody have any comments or changes? No? All right. So can I have a motion to approve?
So moved,
Who was that?
Julianne.
All right. Millie.
Second.
Oh,
I'll take-
Julianne.
I'll
Okay.
do second then.
Okay. Julianne, Fran, second. All right. All right. And I'll take a roll call vote. Let's see, Julianne,
Aye.
Fran,
Aye.
Millie,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Jean,
Aye.
John.
Abstain, I wasn't at the meeting.
Oh, sorry, I didn't notice that. And Dario was not at the meeting either. Okay. All right, minutes are approved. And did anybody else? Oh, Amy.
Yeah, I just have a quick question to Lori. Who in the town is doing the traffic counts? Do we have
It's
that
actually-
equipment?
Yeah, it's actually not the town. It's Central Mass Regional Planning Commission.
Okay,
So they have the technology to be able to do it at no cost to the town.
Mhm.
So that is what we opted to go forward with. So it gives us a couple of extra thousand to play with should the committee decide that they want an extra from Weston and Sampson or RKG. So little flexibility built in.
Yeah, it's nice. I didn't realize it was at no cost. That's great.
Lori, I
Alright.
have a question about that traffic count and analysis. Is that going to consider the possible new fire station?
So the traffic count is going to be based on, so the numbers that CMRPC is going to gather is going to be actual traffic data and turning movements. And then Weston and Sampson is going to take that raw data and they're going to analyze it. So I imagine that they're going to build in a future build condition. But of course, right now we have a number of properties that have redevelopment potential, but we don't know what the vision is yet. So we don't really know what they're ultimately going to be. But certainly Weston and Sampson is aware that the new fire station is in the queue. So I imagine that that will be part of their analysis.
Okay, thanks.
I just have one more question too. I know Russell had talked about 4 West Main Street, and before the RFP, we talked about there was going to be a feasibility study for the 4 West Main Street. Is that what they're doing? It was even questioned at town meeting once because the town is doing a feasibility study. And then we said the downtown revitalization was going to do a different feasibility study. Are they still doing a feasibility study, or it's just market analysis along with the other businesses?
Yeah, they are not doing a feasibility study for 4 West Main Street. So what they're doing is they're doing a market analysis to help us determine what types of uses are actually competitive. So what types of uses would do well, like what types of businesses we may be able to recruit for our downtown, and you know what the capture area will be. So that's theirs is going to be definitely far more general than a feasibility study. It's my understanding the feasibility study that John has talked to me about in the past was specific to where should the town hall go? Should it stay in its current location? Should it move to 4 West Main Street or possibly another location? So it was specific to the town hall, not necessarily, you know, what is the end use for 4 West Main. I imagine if the town decides that it won't be the future home of the town hall, and there are no other municipal uses that would be appropriate for that building, then they'll issue an RFP and they'll look to sell the building to somebody, a developer, or, and you know, there are certain frameworks that they could put in, like the RFP for the White Cliffs. So the RFP could specify what they would like West Main, you know, for West Main Street to be. And then people will respond to that RFP, should that be chosen to be the appropriate path.
All right, well, if there's no other questions, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Just
But
one.
Dario
quick
has
thing.
another question, and Millie too.
I just want to clarify, it says next meeting for January 19th. That is for the community meeting, yeah, and the different time change on that, right? Okay,
Right, so then it'll be January 26th for our
okay,
next. Okay, Dario? Oh, we can't hear you, Dario. I see your mouth moving though. You are not muted though.
Can't
Guess
hear
I
you.
can't hear him. That's funny. I wonder why. Still can't. That is very weird.
Can you type
I'm
it
so
in?
sorry. I know. Yeah,
You
there's
can
no
type it.
chat option, I don't think. I
Oh,
don't see
we
a
don't?
chat option, no. Oh, well.
Can you
Maybe,
text it? You can
yeah,
text it to me.
you can text it. It's okay. Okay. All right. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Second,
Second,
Millie. All right. Let's do the roll call vote. Julianne,
Aye.
Fran,
Aye.
Millie,
aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Jean,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Dario.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Good. All right. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Have a
Nice
great
meeting.
night.
Thanks,
and
guys.
Have a
Thank
happy
Happy holidays,
holiday. Happy
everybody.
holidays.
Christmas.
Yeah.